Hey, and welcome back to Running Through Mash in Maya. Today we're going to be talking about curve node, ID node, and whatever else seems fun, probably a random node. So let's go ahead and make something fun. I'm going to just resize this so that it's sort of vaguely arrow-like. Shabam. One thing I didn't note in the first video is how to get your objects to stick up properly. So we're going to put the pivot point at the very bottom of the object, snap that to the grid. We're going to freeze its transformations, and we're going to delete its history. Final thing to do is to group it, weirdly enough. Creating a mesh network out of something that's in a group allows you to afterwards select the item itself, translate relatives to the group, and place it sort of so that you can get a default state that's more appropriate. So we're going to take this group, going to go back in here, select a mesh, and we're going to name this snack mesh. I don't know if this is actually going to look like a snake afterwards, but we're making a curve, so I figured it's going to be vaguely snake-like. Let's give it a shot. So next on the agenda is to create a curve. We're going to take an EP curve tool, hold down X to get a vaguely interesting curve. No idea why that was the option I went with there. And we're going to do some fun things. We're going to select our curve, control point, press B to put in its soft select, and then we're going to just smash it upwards. Click over here, do the same, smash it downwards, put this back into object mode, turn off our soft select, take our spacebar, quick select menu, go to curves, and go to curl. This is just a very quick way to add some interesting motion to a curve. Similarly, we're going to go back to our curve, go to a smooth, make sure it's only at 1, smooth it once, and now we've got a fairly elegant looking curve that we're going to work with. So we now have our mesh network. We have no distribution. We have 10 objects. Let's increase that to 100. Under the waiter node, we're going to add a curve node. If you create this curve node with your curve selected when you do it, it will automatically populate your curve uh, input. However, afterwards, if you neglected to do that, like I did, you can simply middle mouse drag it over to input curves, and suddenly, shabam, it's it's getting on your curve. It's getting on there like it's flies on rice. So the step guy here determines how far along the curve it actually goes. Animation speed is a little funny. Sometimes you'll want to put this at 1.1. It doesn't always work, but it seems to be a good value. Animation speed has to do with if you put this to that and then you play last it just animates. So it does some funny things for some other settings on occasion. So we just usually put this to 0. The other thing we're going to work on is whether we want to calculate rotations or not. Currently, they're all pointing upwards, but if you enable calculate rotations, it will actually follow the normals of the curve, which can be very helpful. However, if you watch the animation speed, you'll notice that sometimes this curve is actually doing okay. Shocking. Well, let's pretend it's not doing okay and duplicate this curve to create an aim curve, which will help us keep consistency with where these objects are pointing. So, Control D to duplicate or Command D on a Mac. I'm going to scale it down for a simple aim curve. Go back, keep our attribute editor open, go to our curve node, drag this into the aim curve section. We're going to increase the roll to 1. Now, for whatever reason, they seem to want to go perpendicular to it. So I am going to take our original object and on using the group, find the x-axis, which is this blue rotation, and we're just going to snap it down that way. Or we can work on the z-axis. Either way is fine by me. There. Now, it's interesting. Because we took this curve and just scaled it down, we do end up with a couple issues that we'll have to resolve with manual tweaking. So, forgive me for that. But if we don't, we end up with this guy right here. And he's what I would consider a serious no-no. So we're just going to tweak it around until this kind of insane curve becomes something a little bit more docile. Cool. So now when we play blast it, so to speak, the curve follows the aim of the it aims towards the curve and it sort of follows along in a way that we can designate. Very cool. I know you guys may not be animating, but this is helpful if you want to fix a problem that's really specific to one little area. So, thought I'd throw it in there anyway. So, we just covered the curve. ID node, let's go over that again. And in a little bit more detail, we're going to add a donut. We're going to isolate it, frame it up using F. Do the same sort of principles as we did the other guy. I'm going to put him, snap him there, freeze the transformation, delete the history. We're going to group him so that he is flat on the curve as well. And scale him up a smidge. We will open up the repro node and drag him in there. Now comes the time we go back here, add our ID node. I want a random cycle of them so they're not totally even Steven. And yeah, cool beans. So talking about the ID node, ID type random, linear iterates through them at a regular interval. So you'll go 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1 based on the number of the index of your objects. Otherwise, if you choose random, it'll basically, use a random seed generator to determine which object gets placed when. These other two ones are not super useful with the exception of maybe fixed. This allows you to switch back and forth between objects. So if you've got a bunch of objects and you only want one of them or the other to be shown, and you're kind of going back and forth between the two, maybe one's a high resolution mesh and one's a low resolution, and you don't want to futz about with it. You can use this fixed ID to go back and forth between the two. Typically, I like to use random though. It's one of the main reasons I use an ID node at all, so that works out pretty well. You'll notice if we increase the distance on these nodes, on the distribution node, we end up with some really wonky behavior. If we hadn't created this as a singular point, it would have come with, I believe, 10 distance, which kind of just makes it go away from the curve, especially as it goes along the curve. So down here, it's 10 units away from the curve. So if you just put that to 0, you'll be fine. Let's see. Okay, last thing I want to go over on this video is adding a random node. Random is the thing that I love to use anytime I want to add pretty much any randomness at all. I'm going to add 360 degrees of random ability on all these objects, and I'm going to add the ability to go up to double in size in any given axis. One of the cool things about this is if you go even harder on this, you end up with curves that control generalized volumes of scattered shapes. So if you select your original curve now, put in a control vertex, you can easily take this and shape a sort of vague distribution of items, which I think, especially when you're doing any kind of surreal project, is of invaluable use. So that's going to do it for this video. I think we're going to move on to the next topic. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye!